I see recruitment as hunting or fishing. What I'm looking at is farming.
Pro tip for listeners, if you can get the government to pay for your startup, that's pretty great.
Twice, 2 weeks in creative endeavour, gathers people making positive dents on society and shares their stories and journeys to now. I'm your host, David Binstead. Episode 64, Part 2, features Ruth McDavitt, CEO of Summer of Tech, and Finn Lawrence, co-founder of Mevo Electric Car Share. A few of the highlights we cover are building great teams and diversity and inclusivity in tech. Then some of their journeys to now, accompanied by a craft brew tasted and rated, because that's the way we roll. Listen to the first part and more than 2 years of positive impact people in your podcast app of choice and over at twicepodcast.com. How they deliver impact starts with their teams, which is where we pick up the conversation. Before we talk about partners, I'm really interested just to get some shout outs about your people.
In the beginning, there were 7 startup companies inside a local incubator called Creative HQ, and they basically were startups, they were tech. They needed some devs basically for the summer. They had no budget, they had no HR function. They gate-crashed a career fair at Vic and they said, hey, we've got jobs. And they hired 14 students over the summer, shared them across the 7 companies, and it went okay. They were slightly mind-blown about...
Record reflects Finn's giggling in the corner.
Were you around? You're not that old.
No, I wasn't. I just like it when people refer to things as going okay. You're like, we thought it was going to go terribly,
yeah,
but it went okay. So you're like, it's kind of a success.
Success.
I love that.
It went okay. Hey, some of these people from generation 0 or 1 or whatever it is are still out there being awesome, and they're all out there being awesome. The challenge was that they realised what Vic, all tertiaries are not teaching, and the challenges that they face with the moving, technology stuff, and the challenges of academics being academics, having not actually worked necessarily in industry recently, and all the things. So they started what we still call boot camps, which is not your Dev Academy style long form developer boot camp, but they're short, sharp, practical workshops. So it evolved with a bunch of startup entrepreneurs turning into volunteers to teach the things so that they could have more useful interns over the summer, and then it sort of, the volunteer crew grew, the alumni who came through the program started giving back, and it sort of snowballed a bit. So the core team for the bulk of Summer of Tech's life has been really passionate people wanting to give back and help people into the industry. In every way, shape or form. And so the founders, the one who's still involved is on the board is John Clegg, and he's been, absolutely passionate about this space for more than 11 years, but it's definitely his baby. And we've grown the team through there. I was volunteering for a long time. I had a day job and became employee number 1 oh my gosh, nearly 3 years ago, which is quite scary, which is very cool. We've had hundreds of volunteers who've made the program, who've delivered the stuff, who've done the thing. We've had a lot of people, we've had contracted people throughout the history, for different skill sets that we could slowly afford to bring in. Milestone for me was this year in April when we hired Catherine, our operations manager, which was super, super exciting.
Yay.
Yay. We'll totally yay that. When we started Summer of Biz, it was this really exciting opportunity that we were growing like crazy, and suddenly we have like 4,000 students on the platform, and that's a really big number. We have quite a strong focus. The iceberg of what we do is not actually interns. Internships are kind of like the end. The iceberg of 90% is supporting students to communicate their potential better.
From communicating potential better to the thorny issue of businesses failing to nurture junior talent better, and a recent example from the Twitters. Wanted, senior dev, must have 3 years experience. And it's like, well, hang on a second, that's a failure of a system to not bring on junior devs, which, as the example you've given, is kind of, well, this is the answer to that. We are creating a community of people that can support each other, mentor, two-way process, to make people into senior devs.
the job description for senior devs, if a company, if an organisation has the culture proper, then a big chunk of a senior dev's role is to nurture junior devs. Those are the companies that everyone wants to work for. That's where it's really at, and that has been broken. And so looking at that, I see recruitment as hunting or fishing. What I'm looking at is farming. Can we become a community? Yes, the C word. So yeah,
that's a great comparison.
And you, Finn, how about you and your team? Just talk briefly to, it was you and Eric that kicked it off back in 2014.
3 years ago, Eric and I, just as you do when you're kind of early stage, you sit down and you go, look, we both think this is a problem. Do we think we can do this? Okay, let's try. Let's give it a go. And yeah, it's been an incredible kind of journey. Since then, it's been awesome, a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights. But yeah, I kind of feel now we're getting to the point where, it's almost about starting to build the company and it's less about building the product, which is, a very interesting position to be in. So at the moment, it's myself and Eric. We, about a year ago, had someone from Europcar reach out and kind of say, hey, like Europcar's been thinking about working in this space. What are you guys doing? Do you want to grab some beer? And so we met this guy called Phil, and he was from Europcar, and he'd been in rental cars since he was, knee-high to a grasshopper through high school and stuff. And kind of had a few meetings. Then he was like, actually, you know what? Like, can I just, like, if I quit my job, will you guys hire me? Like, and we kind of went, what, really? Like, you have a real job at a real car rental company? What? And he went, yeah, but no, like, you guys, what you're doing seems great. So that was incredible. So yeah, we now have Phil, who kind of looks after all our fleet stuff. And I mean, it's one of those things in hindsight to think that we could have run a car company when neither of us knows anything about cars or lease agreements or like how to even bloody almost change a tire was just laughable. We've had a really good friend of mine, Fraser, helping us out with our kind of marketing and community stuff. And then we're just starting to bring on a few other people. So we're kind of looking now at like, what do we need to start to scale up things like our operational things. Looking at bringing on probably 4 more people to kind of bring us up to like close to 10 over the next 3 months. So yeah, it's kind of this weird headcount thing where, yeah, I think we'll get there, but I think it's just a whole nother ball game to try and think about building a company out of people instead of building a product out of stuff that you can do yourself.
Any advice for building good teams? Just talk to me about some of your learns.
So I think values override everything. Hire people with good values similar to yours. We say a lot, hire for potential and train for skill, because it's more important to get that diversity of thought, people not like me, people with those different perspectives, and then treat them well, and then you'll get magic.
Gelato.
And gelato.
Yep. Finn.
Awesome. I'll be the first to admit I know almost nothing about HR, and as a founder you just kind of have to work your way through that as much as you can. Probably my favorite kind of soundbite thing that I carry around with me in terms of, and this has worked well for me in previous roles where I've managed people, which I'll credit to I think he's the current head of product at TradeMe, but basically the line is, people who are well led don't need to be managed, and that's one of my favorites in terms of like, actually in terms of culture, in terms of values, in terms of work ethic, in terms of the direction that you're pushing as a team. If you, as someone who is kind of seen to be at the head of that as a company founder, if you're pushing harder than anyone else, then, people who vibe with you and who kind of have the same ideas, they will do the same. I think it's important to have a bit of fun as well, of course.
We had Rachel doing a talk yesterday about how to job, so aimed at interns, but one of the things that she definitely emphasised was that fun part. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
I don't want to bring the tone down, but I do want to cover off some really important things with both of you. What else do you think needs to happen to help make tech both a more diverse place and also a safer and more respectful place for people?
I'm using the word inclusive a lot at the moment around that, because diversity, I think, often people get stuck on gender and women in tech, and let's just lift it, right? Let's look at inclusivity, because if we go from a basis of respect and support and just be good people, I think we've got a lot that we can do there. So I think I'm going to do a plug, if I can, for ally skills. So one of the big breakthroughs for me this year was attending an ally skills workshop with Valerie, Aurora, who's amazing, and all her stuff is open source. But it helped me understand that being an employed human being, I have a position of privilege, and I have an opportunity to be the change and help people who don't have my privilege. So the only way we can fix the culture is to empower people who are there to make a difference and to change and to recognize. I think the first step is recognizing that you have a problem, and then there might be a few steps. I don't know how many, but we can all go on that pathway. There are some really simple things that we can do as individuals, such as changing our language. It's really rare now in tech, the companies I hang out with, that I hear the word guys. It's a gendered term, and so if we can just call people on it and just start changing language and providing different role models, that's a really good start. And there's a whole bunch from there. Like I can go crazy on this one. There's a whole lot of really practical things that we can all do to make it a cooler place to be.
Finn, what do you reckon?
I'm probably like one of the more privileged people on the earth, which is like, sounds like a weird thing to say, but when you think about like being a like educated white guy who lives in a first world country, who comes from like, a middle class enough family that like my basically worst case scenario is that my startup falls over and that I move home and live with my parents and their fridge is always full of food and like.
And how many Audis do you own?
We've got leases on 18 Audis today. So I mean, exactly. Just put it on the stack, like put it on the privilege stack. Like I've just got this huge pile of it sitting in the corner. I am always going to find it hard to know a lot about like first-hand experience of what that's like. And I try and think about it with that lens, and I try and think about it with how can I just be more empathetic? How can I keep it at the top of my mind? How can I use it to make decisions? How can I help bring other people, especially privileged people, to where I have gotten with it, and kind of just generally help trend things that way. I also find that being in a position of privilege gives me a lot of strength. Like when I wake up in the mornings, I kind of just think about all the things that are great in my life, which is a lot of things. And that gives me a lot of energy, that gives me a lot of strength to go out and actually do a lot of stuff. Judge my efforts however you like, but I like to work on things that are important to me, and diversity is one of those things.
I must say, and this isn't a plug for BizDojo where we're recording, but I've been really impressed with that it's an attitude, and like it's kind of like a standard that's not officially set, but everyone gets. It's like, this is the attitude that you are going to accept anybody for who they are, and you're going to judge them by what kind of they deliver, by what they do, not by how they look or how they speak or whatever, or the rest of it. And it's like, that is cool. That is one I think of the really unique, cool things about existing in any co-work space. I've got the example here, of course. I don't know if you agree there, if that's been your experience as well.
Absolutely agree. When people get culture right, you can tell. It's hard to describe the steps to get there. And I think it comes back to what Finn said before about people who are well led. You don't need a lot of managing. So if there's really good examples, really good role models, one of the things I try to do, which is really, really tiny, but I aim gender again, but I aim for diversity in terms of our mentors and speakers and bootcamp presenters, and I'm aiming for 50-50 in terms of not that it's binary, but men and not men, no offense, but just trying to just role model and normalize it and make it great. The other thing, the flip side of that I ran a workshop recently on, was trailblazer burnout. One of the challenges of being the only, the first minority person in a particular organisational role is that, particularly for Māori who are in corporates and any kind of institutional, that often they're asked to be the one who does the guitar at every Pōwhiri and every and it's on top of the job that they've been hired to do. And so I think one of my things that I say to employers is hire 2 minority candidates at once. It's a great idea. Or maybe hire like 8. That would be good too if you can support them. But don't just Here's another quote. I've heard this from someone who's been in this burnout phase of being the token, and they said to me, I'm a taonga, which is the Maori word for treasure or something precious. I'm not a token. So if you can treat your newbies, your diverse candidates, your minority people as a taonga, as somebody to protect and look after, I think that's really important as well.
If you're not talking about it and if you're not thinking about it, just ask yourself why. Like, why is that? Is that because you don't have any of this around you, because you don't kind of, interact with it? Or is it just because it's there and you're not kind of looking for it?
I could talk all day about this. I think that I'll just reflect off that. I completely agree. The people who tell me this is not a problem in New Zealand or in our organisation or insert privileged status here, do not have their eyes open. I think that the hashtag #MeToo that came through with the ugliness,
that was incredible.
Was incredible. I had, I think it was 3 weeks ago, a student, a graduate actually. She just got a job. She almost fell out of tech because her first job interview was with a jerk, and I say that with feeling. So during the job interview, she was told that she was too young, that she was black, and that she was a woman, and that she didn't have any experience, and why, how, and maybe come back later, and all these things. And I think possibly English wasn't her first language as well. So talk about intersectionality. This is in Wellington. So to be more positive in the ending, actually the good word spreads as well. So word of mouth. It's a grapevine. It's a village. The good employers are becoming a magnet for the good people. And so that happens too. Yay, the grapevine.
People sometimes ask me why craft beer features in most of our shows. Just like Ruth is about to introduce in a moment, it's a contemporary way to break bread with consenting adults. I like to think that it gives Twice, 2 weeks in creative endeavour, a more relaxed and informal environment for people to feel comfortable sharing their authentic, positive impact stories and formative experiences.
I'm inspecting this label, which is always a good thing. There is so much going on here.
Give us a quick intro if you don't mind, Ruth.
This is Hippity Dippity from Garage Project. It is a Brett IPA. I don't know what these words mean. I think I'm seeing a llama, a ghost, a toadstool. There's possibly a magic mushroom vibe going on here.
This is great. Like, what a picture on the front of this beer bottle. This is substantially more boozy than our last one.
Yep.
This is the third brew that has come out of Garage Project's Wild Workshop.
I'm thinking Finn might be happy with this one.
Yeah, this is good. I like this.
I'm also happy, for the record, but I was getting a bit of a sour thing going on here.
It smells much more than it tastes for me. Like, it's very strong on the nose.
What does that smell like? I wanted to say like lime or something.
Like a passion fruit pineapple type thing. I don't know.
It's almost like one of those sort of lemon sherbet fizz, sort of getting a little bit of that in the aroma before you taste it.
I'm getting that in the taste and the fizz on the tongue. That's particularly fizzy. Sherbet. I'm like, I'll use that one.
Sherbet's a good comparison.
Now, I should warn you that you probably don't want to be operating any machinery after having given this a bit of a savour, because it is a modest 7.4%.
They've hidden it well, though. It doesn't taste, sometimes the big double IPAs and whatnot that are approaching 8%, you can really taste it, but it doesn't,
Dangerously drinkable, yeah.
Dangerously.
When do you think you might find yourselves drinking or partaking of this in the future, if in fact you would ever drink it again?
I think this was definitely a summery afternoon on the deck type of brew, but definitely at home because of the heavy machinery needed. Too drinkable for a session, definitely just a very special occasion. What are you thinking? Summer?
I see myself drinking this probably in about 45 minutes.
Let's round out with a final comment and dine it with a score and see where we go. Ruth?
This is very yummy. It is the beer for people who think they don't like beer, and it's the sparkly sherbet flavoured beautiful thing that you need in the summer. I'm going to stick with my gimmick and say if I could give it a 7.4, I would, but sadly the top score is 5.
You could give it a 7.4 out of 10 if you want.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
My line was going to be I'll flip it around and I'll give it a 4.7.
Sorry.
anyway, it can have 7.4 out of 10 because lots of alcohol, and no, it's good. I'd probably go higher, to be honest. No, it's yummy. I would buy this. I would drink this.
Great, thank you. And Finn?
I haven't left myself enough room with my other score because my other score is very close to 5, but this is much better. But it's still not quite at 5. So it's probably a 4.9, we'll say. I really like it.
4.9, that's about as close as you can get.
No, you could basically put any sour beer in front of me and I'd call it a 5.
I'm going to go 4.75, which is one of the highest scores I've given a beer this year, I think.
Wow, nice.
Awesome.
Really surprised me. I think it would make a great gift for anybody who doesn't quite get craft beer. Talk them through it, give it a bit of time, and get them converted. You're listening to David on Twice, 2 weeks in creative endeavour, episode 64B, with guests Ruth from Summer of Tech and Finn from Mevo Electric Car Share, chatting, building teams, building culture, and some of their journeys to now. Grab the first part, published last week, which covered people, proposition and product via your podcast app of choice and also via twicepodcast.com. If the shiny rectangular computer in your pocket is an iPhone, you hold the power to positively impact this show, reaching a wider audience. Simply navigate to the purple-coloured Apple Podcast app, search for Twice, 2 weeks in creative endeavour, and rate the show with gold stars. Thank you. When you were younger, what did you imagine you wanted to be when you grew up? Ruth?
I had to go to a Christmas party recently where I had to dress in a character for what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up. And I dressed as a pirate, and this was a total cop-out. I don't remember having dreams of being a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, or a candlestick maker when I was young. I just remember in my teenage years I decided I wanted to be not a teacher because both my parents were teachers and I needed to rebel. And the irony of me working with students day in and day out is not lost on either mum or dad.
How many times a day do they remind you of that?
Not too often because they're very polite, but I know that they feel it and they laugh at me secretly.
Oh no, cool. How about you, Finn?
I don't know. I'll definitely pull on your thread there, Ruth, of not really having a memory of what it was that I wanted to be. But I remember from a very young age thinking about it more as what I wanted to do. And since I was very, very small, I had this fascination with Lego, with Meccano, with all these types of things where you can build stuff. That was just something that I just loved doing, was like, how do I, whether it's for a purpose or for whatever, or just for fun, like building things. And yeah, that thread kind of followed me a bit through high school, and then I thought maybe I wanted to be an engineer because engineers build stuff, but then that didn't really vibe so well, and then kind of jumped around and tried a few degrees before I settled on software development, and realized kind of when I was getting towards the end of my degree that both my parents are software developers. So
those bloody parents, they've got so much to answer for.
It's not like I hadn't known. It's just that, I don't know, I just hadn't, you just don't think. You're not like, oh, I'm going to go and do what my parents are going to do, right? But like, it turns out that, that's how it goes, maybe.
It's hilarious. I love it.
Oh, great. Which leads me really neatly on to, we ask all our guests a couple of questions now. The first of which is your first, your worst, and your best jobs.
First, I think, was shelving library books at the Karori Library because Mum's friend and our neighbour was working there and they needed a holiday job shelver. Loved that. My worst, I'm probably going to go with selling fresh fish at Billingsgate Fish Market. So I call myself a fishmonger. I wasn't really. It was, again, it was one of those filler jobs, which was fantastic for cultural learning. I was one of 4 women out of, I think there was 600 people working there. I was definitely the only person not from Essex, and it was fascinating. And because there were not many women there, they did not have women's showers. So at the end of a very busy, very smelly shift selling fish, I had to get on the train. Best, I am actually going to say genuinely it's what I'm doing now, because it was my side project, my passion, my late nights, my I really want to do this because it's a good thing. And now it's my day job, and I'm not complaining about that at all. Being paid to do what I love doing is pretty spectacular.
First job for me was kitchen hand in a bar in Nelson when I was very young in high school, I just kind of decided that I wanted my own money. So I was like, I'm going to go and just get a job. That was perfectly fine. Did that for a number of years. The worst job I've ever had wasn't a job, but it was a placement that I had at a consultancy I worked at, which I'm just going to go ahead and name names, but it was Inland Revenue, which was just very, very dry. I'm not that into tax as a topic. I did not fit in there.
Find your crowd.
Oh my god, yeah. So yeah, that was probably the bottom of the rung. But I mean, that said, it was an entirely pleasant summer. I had decent hours and started early and got the afternoons off, and it was all very, government job-y. And I think, same as you, Ruth, my best thing is the thing I'm doing now, which is most of my time spent on Mevo, and then a few hours here and there contracting with Creative HQ and doing a bit of freelance on the side, which is a really good mix.
You touched on there briefly, Finn, that you tried a few different degrees to kind of eventually find the right fit, which was what your parents have been hiding from you all along. But did you find that with work as well?
Yeah, I think if there was anything I'd done differently, it would have been, I wish I'd done less planning, in inverted commas, but I wish I'd known what winning looked like more. And so I think I had this thing for, through my late teens and kind of university, where you kind of have this vague idea of like where you want your life to be by the time you're in your 40s, or something like that, like when you're, maybe you have kids or whatever that picture looks like for you. But that kind of skips the punchline, which is that, every year is like another incredible year in your life where you can do a bunch more stuff. And to think about things on that horizon in any more than kind of a vague sense, for me was a mistake. And I think, and then the other thing is like knowing what winning looks like doesn't mean like, to use the cliche example, the house with the white picket fence and the 2.4 kids or whatever it is, right? Like that's too specific. Like you need to be much more focused on, I think, on like things that are important but that fit a lot of different outcomes, and really figure out what's an example? So there's the great example of like, which you might have heard the story about, like filling up a jar and you put big rocks in and you're like, is the jar full? No, I can fit smaller things around that. So I guess my thing would be, I wish I'd figured out what those big rocks were instead of focusing on some of the little detail around the edge and kind of, but I think, I feel like I'm there now, which is good.
How about you, Ruth? Looking back in hindsight, what perhaps would you do differently?
I'm going to go with cheesy and go nothing, because I am also trying to live the moment, and I think we only got here today by being all the flawed and wonderful humans that we were along the way. One of the resources I have for people trying to plan and think about careers is Claudia Batten's Squiggly Line Talk. It's a few years old now, but it's totally relevant. And the bit I'm going to pick on here is vomit moments, which I really need to embrace more, because if I do have one thing, it would be trusting my gut and just doing things faster. I think that at the end of the day, jumping, doing what you love, building the airplane as you fly, that's the best way to learn and just get on with it. So I mean, I've had a very squiggly career path. I similarly had a few false starts with education things, and I ended up doing a degree in English literature, which is completely bizarre, but shelving library books. I love books, I like reading, I did it was great. And my partner finally figured out that it was useful when I was called in to edit his thesis. So he it's certainly things have use in the most unexpected ways. So no big regrets, but I think like Finn, those big rocks would have been good, defining what value is and what you want to be doing, not necessarily being.
What's upcoming for you respectively in your professional and perhaps even personal worlds? Better holiday maybe?
Absolutely. Summer is recovery time. for us. We've done our work. The interns now get to do the hard yards, and the mentors get to do their hard yards. However, recovery time is often about a week, and that week has passed. The exciting thing for us this summer is we've actually got 3 interns of our own, so we're going to have a super busy summer, just getting a whole lot of things happening that have been on the wish list for a while, and really looking forward to whatever 2018 brings.
How about you, Finn? Well, what's happening for you upcoming professionally and perhaps personally?
It's fair to say we've just doubled the fleet. So we've gone from kind of like 8 or 9 cars to 18 cars as of kind of the day before yesterday. So for us, really, we're in just growth, sell mode. We've done most of the things that we need to do once now. So now it's just about scaling it, which, I mean, you kind of have your fingers crossed that it'll scale and it'll all work. So yeah, a lot of crossing fingers, touching wood, a lot of pushing hard. Pro tip for listeners: if you can get the government to pay for your startup, that's pretty great.
Pro tip for listeners: don't fill out forms for the government just to follow that direction. Do what you need to do for your startup.
Yeah, I agree.
Shoutouts, but specifically 2 or 3 that come to the top of your mind, or just people you want to just say thank you to. Ruth.
Awesome, because when I didn't answer your team question, I forgot about shouting out to Roger and Tiger, who run our amazing Eiffel Tower of a platform. So the work that we do, we could not do without them. The other people who help make Summer of Tech awesome are awesome. The shout out I was going to do, because I think I prepared one earlier, was that right? Was for Dignity. So Dignity are a social enterprise that came through the Vic Bootcamp last year and were amazing enough to ask me to join their advisory board. So I think what they're doing is incredible. They're working to help get more sanitary products more accessible for every woman everywhere, but especially with their really cool buy one give one model for schools. So they are awesome. Jacinda and Miranda, there's my shout out.
Finn.
Always too many to do properly, right? But I guess the team at Mevo and at Creative HQ, pleasure to work with everyone I work with. We've got an amazing external board at Mevo, some really kind of strong directors who have helped Eric and I and the team through just like a lot of real hard yards that we've had to do to date. And then on a more general note, all of the people who have kind of made the Mevo thing happen, because I feel like we're in a pretty good place. We're about to start a pretty intense period of growth, and there's been a lot of kind of organizations, people, customers. The list is long of people who kind of went, oh, this kind of seems like a good idea. These guys are probably talking a bit of crap, but they seem like they're going to keep doing it, so we might get behind them. And it really takes a village to get anything done. So just I guess thanks to everyone who's helped out.
It is one of the P's that I was going to ask, but we've run out of time about, which is the partnerships and this whole sense of not being able to do stuff by yourself. Nothing wrong with having the idea, but getting it delivered and making it a thing just needs a whole bunch of people. And I appreciate on both of the websites, which I'll link to, you've got business partnerships and also organisational sponsors that I haven't got time to shout out now, but just wanted to acknowledge. If there is an analogue object, item or thing that you can't live without, what would it be, Ruth?
My swimming goggles, which are prescription lenses.
Wow.
My life changed significantly. Also scuba diving, but the goggles, because I love swimming, but I don't like crashing into people. Summer would not be summer without my prescription swimming goggles. There you go.
Wonderful. How about you, Finn?
I love whiteboards. I'm such a whiteboard person. Good Lord. But no, okay. Analog item. Actually, I've got it in my pocket. It's probably because I've taken it off for this, but probably the watch my parents got me for my 21st, which is a lovely chainmail Scargan with no numbers or anything on the face of it. So it's very plain, very minimal, but I really like it.
Hey, so where can we find you both respectively online?
I do the Twitters and I do the LinkedIns. So I'm at Ruth McDavitt, no dots or spaces on the Twitter. I do the LinkedIn sporadically, quite handy. I don't Insta-face chat, really. You can find me in the real world in cafes, at gelato establishments and at the BizDojo at the moment.
How about you, Finn?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at FinTechNZ.
Hey, you can connect with Twice Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Twice Podcast, and me on Twitter occasionally at David_Binstead. It just leaves me to thank our supporters and sponsors, BizDojo, Collider Wellington and Wellington City Council, our beer supporter for this episode, Garage Project, again, but also to gratefully thank our two guests. Firstly, Ruth McDavitt.
Thank you.
No, a pleasure. And also Finn Lawrence.
Thank you to both of you.
It's David here, rounding out this second part of episode 64. It was a really fascinating chat with Ruth and Finn, sharing insights and perspectives on teams, inclusivity and journeys to now. I want to shout out two organisations who deserve your attention, interest and support, because they help me regularly deliver this show. BizDojo are creating and facilitating communities of talented, interesting and clever humans, pursuing their passions through a burgeoning network of co-work spaces across New Zealand. One of the magic sauces they sprinkle liberally over their venues is getting the culture right for people to collaborate to do their best work in an inclusive, friendly and respectful environment. With flexible options for small and large teams and contract-free plans to suit any business, go develop and deliver your purpose over at bizdojo.com. And if you're in Wellington, build your future better by checking out the Collider Wellington monthly programme of largely free events. Access world-class intelligence, hang with some of the smartest people on earth, and learn something new. Their goal is to connect thought leaders, emerging entrepreneurs, and inspirational experts to support the growth of the greatest little city on earth, Wellington, New Zealand. For all the details, go to colliderwellington.com, which is spelt Collider, Wgtn.com. There's links to both fine organisations right in the show notes. A grateful thanks to BizDojo, Collider Wellington and Wellington City Council for their support of this show. You can find show notes and links in your podcast app of choice and via twicepodcast.com, where you'll also find today's episode match from the deep archives, number 9, with Glenn Pickering, who was then Festival Director at the 2016 World Buskers Festival, talking teams and silliness. The recommendation comes with a couple of warnings. Firstly, there's quite a lot of swearing, and secondly, the audio quality is not up to recent standards. A quick PSA, public service announcement. It's coming up to summer holidays here in the Southern Hemisphere. Everyone, and I mean everyone, heads to the beach, and everything closes down for a few weeks until mid-January. Having over-delivered on episodes this year, I'm taking a short break too. For your holiday listening pleasure, I'm gathering with this year's co-hosts to record a special show where we'll reflect on 2017, our creative endeavours and co-hosting stories and tales from all the episodes recorded this year. Thanks to you, our listeners in more than 50 countries, for lending us your ears. It means a lot. I hope the conversations offer inspiration for developing your own creative endeavours. Give family and friends the free gift of podcasting by showing them how they can access this and many other shows on their digital devices. You might also suggest they follow, comment and share at Twice Podcast on Twitter, Instagram and even Facebook. It's been an amazing second year of chatting with inspiring innovators, creatives, enterprises and also the senior politicians and social enterprise World Forum experts. Thanks to the many people who have contributed to this Love Not Money project, either in the foreground or in the background. While there are too many to mention individually, I particularly wanted to shout out the following. Alana, who was our fearless intern from the New Zealand Radio Training School, who supported the show in the earlier part of 2017. My guest and regular co-hosts, Caitlin, Jen, Jack and Rebecca, who've given time, insight and shared magical moments in the pod cave at BizDojo this last year. George and the team at Garage Project for most of the craft brews tasted and murdered, or rated as we prefer to call it, in the longer form shows this year. Nick Shearing, co-founder of BizDojo, and all the rest of his amazing team. He's one of the most generous, thoughtful and kind humans I've had the pleasure of meeting since shifting up to Wellington. And Jamie, Philippa and Michelle from Wellington City Council and Wellington Regional Economic Development Agency, READER as we prefer it, respectively, who've actively supported me in making and delivering the show over the last year. I also want to thank all our guests for giving time and insight and for showing their vulnerable sides alongside learns, lessons and laughs. And lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank you, our listeners, for lending us your ears. Beyond here lie dragons, or in audio terms, highlights and sometimes lowlights and outtakes from the recordings that didn't make the main episode cut. Enjoy. So, Christmas present tips for family, friends, and parents that give you amazing presents.
Hippity dippity garage project there.
Great shout.
Finn, any?
Christmas present ideas? I always try to go for something useful, something meaningful, or something edible or drinkable.
All of the above? Can you get like convergence on the...
God, if you could nail the trifecta, I don't think I've ever done it, but if you could, that'd be impressive. Oh my God, a hippity dippity you shouldn't have.
What was it?
Useful, meaningful, and edible.
There you go.
There's still some left in here.
Well, let's sort that out.
Make it go away.
I have a Twitter account, but I have this problem with social media where I don't know what to post. Like I can never right size my tweets because I just don't. I don't know. I just don't get it. I've figured it. Hey,
tech bro.
I know. I'm failing hard.
They just gave you 280 characters. You can totally say something.
It just makes it more complicated. Like, do I post longer things? Anyway,
the only place I could find you with any significance was GitHub.
Oh yeah, it's my GitHub. Yeah, there's probably quite a bit of stuff on my GitHub.
Complete side cultural reference. IT Crowd TV show.
Not me.
Strong, yes.
Okay, good. The other TV show that it referenced, Countdown, and the Street Countdown, and the character -1. Sorry, I was a complete aside.
Incredible reference. I love that thread. Countdown is, I mean, the 8 out of 10 cats do Countdown is like my... You know when you sometimes like watch so much of something on YouTube that you open YouTube and that's all that's there? That's 8 out of 10 cats does Countdown for me.